I absolutely despise zoom lenses. No, I'm not going to take that harsh of an approach, but I think you should avoid zoom lenses when possible, specifically for video. If you want to do photography with zoom lenses, go right ahead. Doesn't really matter because you can't really capture a zoom in a photo unless you're doing some really extensive motion blur, but that's a different topic. For video, I think you should avoid zoom lenses almost all the time because one, I think they make shooters lazy. And the reason for that is when you have a zoom lens, it's a lot easier to just plant your tripod, plant your camera, and kind of zoom in and out of different areas as you see fit. When you're not really thinking about the focal length, the distance from the subject, and composition and how you want it to look, especially if you have a really long extended zoom range. If you're just going from something really wide to something really long, it makes for people to be a little bit lazy, and I don't like that. I want people to be thinking about where they're at, what focal length they're using, and why they're using it. With primes, that's the only thing you can think about. Where do I need to put my camera so that this lens, because I want to use that focal length, where do I need to put my camera to make that happen? It forces you to think about those things, and I think it forces that creativity and the creative compositions that come from that. The other reason I don't particularly like zoom lenses is it's because they tend to be less sharp than prime lenses. Now, what about this zoom lens? It's great. Yes, there are some zoom lenses that are really sharp and they are really great. But in general, if you're talking about resolution and the sharpness of a lens, 99% of the time, the prime is going to beat the zoom. Now, there are some really bad primes and there are some really nice zooms, so it's not a universal across the board. But when you're comparing really nice primes to nice zooms, really nice zooms for that matter, the primes, they got the little bit of edge, and they tend to have faster apertures, so then you can stop down and get that extra sharpness and resolution that you can't always get with a zoom lens. So I have some zoom lenses. I'm shooting on a zoom lens right now. I like to use zooms like primes. I say I have the Sigma 18 to 35, and I will use that as an 18, a 24, some cases a 28, but mostly a 24 or a 35. And I like to think of it as those primes in one lens. Same thing for the Sigma 50 to 100 that I don't own, but I did rent, and that's a great lens. Very nice lens, but I like to think of it as a 50 or a 100. Yes, you have zoom range in between there, but if you think about it like that, I think it tends to make for better creative compositions because it forces you to think about where you're at rather than just planting and kind of punching in and doing that deal. Now, if it's a live production environment where you're doing a play or a theatrical production, a concert, some kind of live stage event or a live sporting event, some live event, zooms are very valuable because they allow you that flexibility that you need when things are moving in real time. So having zooms in that situation, you wouldn't want to have to switch primes, like it'd be really weird if in the NFL, all the camera ops were like switching primes throughout the game. It wouldn't make much sense. So zooms definitely make sense in those environments. But if you're doing, any kind of filmmaking type work, where it's a little bit more creative and more intentional with the compositions, stick with primes. And for that matter, documentaries, that's kind of the middle ground where you could go with primes and go for a more cinematic looking documentary, or you could go with zooms and have a more traditional news broadcasty style documentary. But that's really that realm that zooms pull you to, because anytime that you're zooming on camera, like if I were to do it, that doesn't look professional. That looks like video, right? That looks a certain way, and doing that move has specific responses that happen in people's brains when they see something zoom. It doesn't look cinematic unless it's very, very, very intentional, and even then it has to be done remarkably well for it to work. And even then, it still throws people off because that's not how movies are shot. They're not shot with zooms. If you have the zoom, it feels more documentary, feels more authentic, feels more real. Hence why they do the fake zooms in movies like Serenity or Firefly that got really popular. I think Battlestar Galactica did it quite a bit, where they have these like zoom shots in space that are kind of shaky, handheld, make it feel like it's real. So I don't know, that's a tangent. But anyways, having the zoom lenses, they're handy in certain situations, but I think they should be avoided. Again, not talking about photography, not talking about the specific situations, but just as a general rule, I think it's good to stick with the primes because it forces you to work within those limitations. And oftentimes when you put yourself within limitations, it forces you to be better, to do better, and to learn and to grow and to do all the things that you want to be doing. Zooms tend to be a little bit more on the other side of that, where it's just quick and easy, and yes, it's flexible, and yes, you can be a lot faster, but that doesn't mean the results are going to be better. So if you have the option to buy zooms or primes, you could go with either one, but treat your lenses, if you're doing the kind of work that I'm talking about, treat your lenses as if they're primes. I think you'll get better results in the end.